Hi, I'm Whack.
And I'm Pat, and this is another episode of the Weekly Orbit for the week ending the 21st of July, 2023. WAC is on the move, as you can see, and we had some little audio issues earlier, so hopefully we'll get through the episode. But if you hear a little bit of echo, don't worry about it. We're working through those technical difficulties. We got a busy episode this week, WAC. We got a large treasury deposit and rETH. We've got some RPL on Aave news. We've got some RPL tokenomics to talk about. So plenty to go into. So let's get started. And I don't know if I was going to see Mission Impossible this weekend. Have you seen any movies this summer?
I've seen all the Mission Impossible movies so far, but I haven't seen Mission Impossible, the latest one, or Oppenheimer or Barbie. The last movie I saw was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and that was a few minutes before my baby was born, so I haven't been to anything since.
Yeah, I love I'm a boomer, so sorry. I like Tom Cruise movies, but I saw in this new one, he's launching a dirt bike off the side of a cliff and then parachuting from it, and kudos to him. I do a little acting on the side, and for someone of that stature to do their own stunts is pretty respectable. I went skydiving once, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done. And I remember I got down on the ground, and someone else came over who had just done it too, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that was crazy! I want to do it again." I said, "No, I don't need to ever do that again. That was just bananas."
I loved it so much when I went skydiving. It's one of my favorite experiences. I really want to do it again, but I haven't yet, so definitely want to do it again.
Great. All right, into this week's stats, Whack. The deposit pool did pretty well, at 17,082 on the week. And of course, most of this was a gigantic deposit on July 21st. And I think that might have something to do with Nexus Mutual, right?
That's right. So, we mentioned Nexus Mutual a few times on this show, as well as on Rocket Fuel, talking about how there's a whole process going through of them getting ready to swap some of their treasury ETH into rETH, and that finally happened this week. So that was really, really great to see and really exciting to see, and it definitely made a splash. It's the second biggest deposit into the deposit pool so far.
Yeah, as Harpocryptes says here in the Discord, Nexus Mutual vote pass, 14,400 ETH incoming. That's a 2.8% growth in one shot. Not bad. Now they did it through CowSwap, as they put here in their tweet thread. Could you explain to us why would they use CowSwap and not just directly go to Rocket Pool to make that large deposit?
Well, a lot of dexes now, like CowSwap, 1inch, they actually get data from the deposit pool. So they will see if there's enough space in the deposit pool. So they'll break up the order in such a way that they'll take the best routes, right? So some of that will go into the deposit pool. Another chunk of it might go into the secondary market, depending on the size. All of it might go in the secondary market if there's a discount of rETH. So those kind of things factor into that trade. So by going into CowSwap, or 1inch even as well, they'll find the best route, whether that's through the deposit pool or not. Now the majority of this ended up coming through the deposit pool, which is why you saw it on the deposit page on RocketScan. If it had all gone through the secondary market, then it wouldn't have shown up on that page, because it would have been just like another buy or sell. So the fact that it's showing up on there means that ETH came through the deposit pool.
Yeah, that's great to see. I hope this is so we've had, just in the last couple of weeks, we had Nouns Treasury. They did a small buy, I think it was 500 ETH. And assuming that went through successful for them, I think there's more incoming. And then now you have Nexus Mutual with a substantial buy. And I think that, I was just thinking before we start recording, with the current crypto market, the pie isn't really, we don't have a lot of inflows into crypto yet. When the bear market comes back, we will. but I feel like we've been just reshuffling the existing pie. So you've had some investors, you know, buying our ETH, and that's starting to dwindle a little bit as the pie has reached equilibrium. And now the next market I see is those big treasuries. They're sitting on, you know, thousands of ETH in all those DeFi protocols. And I see this as a real growth opportunity for Rocket Pool. And I hope to see it.
Yeah, and a bunch of our community members are doing some really good outreach into these other communities, like working with their treasuries and trying to convince them to swap, right? So this Nexus Mutual swap happened because of Ishka, who's like, took that on. Others have happened because of other community members. I talked to the Nouns, DAOs, people like on a couple of occasions, but one main occasion, trying to convince them to swap. So there's a whole bunch of like community effort going on, and that's not to say these people deserve the credit for that, but they definitely do deserve some acknowledgement, and especially like Ishka for this Nexus Mutual swap.
Yeah, shout out to him or them. Okay, next on the agenda here, RPL. Let's talk about this is kind of in the stats. So RPL's had a tough run here the last month or so. We're down as of this morning. The ratio is 0.0162. So we've kind of stabilized a little bit after a pretty brutal run here. I think as there seemed to be a run up to Atlas, and then since then a little bit of a sell off. One thing this is from earlier this week, but this graph here I think explains a lot of what the part of the problem is such thin liquidity, and if you can, you got any thoughts on the RPL, ETH ratio and the liquidity?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ratio, as you can see, look, it's been on a big downtrend. But if you go back to that page and if you zoom out a little bit, like go on a longer time frame, what you'll see is like since November basically of last year, we were on a tear pretty much. Like November is where we bottomed not bottomed like us, but like the crypto market sentiment kind of bottomed. And what happened at that point was that the FTX collapse was kind of like the trigger of that, and that's kind of when we went on this huge run into Atlas and the period around Atlas. We kind of held on to that for a while, and I think what happened is like we were really hyped, like not just Rocket Pool itself, but LSTs, like liquid staking tokens, liquid staking protocols. They were kind of hyped quite a lot, and they really roared into that withdrawals and the merge completion narrative. And since then things have cooled down a little bit. I think the first few weeks, one of the reasons why the price held up so well was because we were getting these amazing inflows and there was like really strong narratives around that growth. However, in the last couple of weeks that has kind of quietened down a little bit. That's exacerbated by our ETH percentages being a little bit lower because so many of our validators are stuck in the queue. We've got 3,000 validators in the queue right now, so that's a big chunk of validators I think that are still waiting to come online, so that's impacting our APR. So all of these kind of things come together, and of course the narrative shift itself of staking, like people are moving on now to layer 2s, basically, like that's becoming the new narrative. So that money's kind of like cycling around a little bit. One of the things happened as well is like there've been a couple of big sell-offs. Just a couple of days ago, we got a Consensus, which is an oDAO member, sold off all their rewards so far. So those kind of things are hurting the price basically. Now, when it comes to price, like so much of it goes on sentiment, right? And as you showed that chart, there's really low liquidity around these levels that we're at right now. So what happens is any decent size sell really like hits the price hard and makes it go down quickly. However, the inverse is also true, that if we get one or two decent sized buys, we could be like right back up there into that 0.02 range, and we'll be there before you know it. Do you know what I mean? Because that it just moves so quickly. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at, and I'm just waiting to see if anyone thinks that like we might have bottomed now. The sentiment in the Rocket Pool community has been the lowest that I've seen it in a long time. And there's a whole lot of people that below that 10% threshold. There's a whole lot of people who are just really worried about crypto in general, I guess, and Rocket Pool as well. And all of that kind of together is like putting this malaise into the community, and I'm really hoping that we get a couple of big buys, because that will turn around almost instantly if we get that. But like, and those couple of big buys, like if we get a few like $500,000 or like $1 million or $2 million buy, and that's happened a few times, right? But if we get that, we like shoot up 20% or 25% in a day, and that's because of thin liquidity. So we go down quickly, but we're going to also potentially go up really quickly as well. And now we need to see whether people believe that we've bottomed on the ratio or not, and if they think that we have, we might get some big buys, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Now there's been talk about using some of the pDAO treasury to incentivize a rocket pool liquidity or RPL liquidity. What's the status on those discussions?
So the oDAO vote went through. It was passed unanimously. Like very, very, very strong approval for that as well. So now what's happened is that the node operator inflation percentage is 70%, so they get 3.5% of annual inflation. The pDAO are down to 8%. The oDAO are down to 8% instantly from today, and they're tracking down towards 1.5% over the coming year. And then the pDAO goes up to 22% because they've taken that share from the oDAO, and that's tracking up to 28.5% over the course of the year. So now that is basically going to double the amount of RPL that's coming into the pDAO. A chunk of that goes to the IMC already. A chunk of that goes to the GMC already. So now there'll be, in the coming weeks, you'll start seeing, I think we've already seen one proposal from Jasper about allocating those funds in a certain way. And I think we'll start seeing a few more discussions going on about different ways of allocating those funds. That's going to be really interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, this reminds me of just over a year ago when ETH bottomed. It was, you remember, 3-digit ETH. I think the bottom was 880. And there's blood in the streets. And I remember making a couple nice buys at 890 and 900. And, the thought in my head at the time was, I had conviction in Ethereum and its future. And, the fundamentals, you have to look at it from, has anything changed, or is this just markets doing what markets do? Markets go up, markets go down. And so, if you're, and this is not financial advice, of course, as we always say, but, if your convictions with Rocket Pool, you think it's got a good future, this would be a great time to buy the dip, as they say. So moving on to as you kind of talked about WAC a little bit, was some of these RPIPs had passed, one of which was the oDAO budget allocation and inflation. And so here's a nice tweet that highlights the payout over the coming year to the oDAO. And as you said, they used to get 15% immediately. They get cut down to 8% on the next round, which is in August. And then that gradually goes down to eventually 1.5% of the inflation. And so what that means, as you said, part of that's going to the pDAO, which will go to the grants and bounties, also other incentives. So I think it's a great opportunity to, this is going to really, I think, accelerate growth with Rocket Pool, and also distribute some of that to community members who are doing work on the side for grants or bounties. So it's a great thing. And we know the other thing was, it was a unanimous vote by the oDAO as well to take its own pay cut, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So the oDAO basically just voted themselves a 90% pay cut over the coming year, which is quite commendable. Like, they have definitely earned really nicely over the last year and a half since the protocol's launch. And there were a few moments there where they were earning tens of thousands of dollars a month worth of RPL tokens, and that's fine. They were providing a service, right, and they were getting paid for that. However, the community was always thought that they were getting paid too much for the service that they were providing, in terms of the cost to them and stuff like that. So the community and the oDAO together put out these charters. There was a pDAO charter which kind of gives guidelines for how the community should act. There's an oDAO charter which gives guidelines to how the oDAO should act, and then of course there was this inflation reduction, which with inflation change, sorry, not reduction. So the inflation itself is still the same for RPL token. It's still inflating at 5% a year, but the thing that's changed is where that inflation is allocated. So the oDAO taking a huge pay cut like this, I think, and doing it unanimously was a really, really good signal, just to show that, you know, they're really supporting the community here and the community's wants and desires, and hopefully, you know, we can really carry that forwards and really make do with that huge income gain that we'll be getting with this.
Yeah, definitely. On to our next topic here. So our friend of the pod, Jasper, tweets out that the RPL token is now available on Aave. For the first time, you can run a Rocket Pool validator without exposure to RPL, and you can do it in a capital efficient way by borrowing against rETH. So that's exciting. That I should have posted this, but I tweeted out earlier that the RPL token is really unique amongst crypto. Obviously, it gives you governance power only if you're a node operator, not if you're a speculator. It has utility because it's needed to run a node in Rocket Pool, and now you can lend it and borrow against it in DeFi. So it's really a valuable token. It has so many use cases, and this is the first DeFi example. So what are we looking here at WAC? We got Aave's got its chart up. We've got some borrowing, and we've got some supplied. What do you think?
Right. So what this means is you can deposit, I think, any crypto that Aave accepts as collateral. So that's including like rETH, ETH, and others. You can deposit those into Aave, and in return, you can take out a loan in RPL. Now, that loan in RPL that you take out, the interest rate that you pay on that at the moment is less than the rewards that you will get in RPL terms by staking that RPL. What will happen with that then is, like, you know, if there's people who potentially want to run validators but they don't want exposure to RPL, then they can just come put in some ETH or rETH preferably into Aave, get some RPL in return, and then with that RPL they can go and stake their on Rocket Pool, like become a node operator, and they don't have any exposure to the RPL price. However, there is a liquidation risk involved, where if the price moves too much, if the RPL ratio increases too much too quickly, then they can be at a risk of getting liquidated. So the issue that they need to remember is, if they're becoming a node operator, they might, like at the moment, it can take 3 days to exit from Rocket Pool as a node operator. In those 3 days, you know, you might be at risk of liquidation. Also, if at some point there's an exit queue on the beacon chain, then that could potentially take days, maybe weeks, even if a lot of people are trying to exit at the same time. So there are some risks in doing this, like, you know, there's liquidation risk, there's the risk of being stuck with that. However, for certain groups of people, I think this is really desirable because it lets them get the outsized returns of being a Rocket Pool node operator, but not taking on any of the RPL's price risk, in the sense that they don't want to put their portfolio into RPL. They'd rather just keep it as the ETH or rETH, whatever they choose. Now, what will happen is eventually the rewards that you get from RPL will kind of balance out with the interest payment that you'll pay to Aave, and at that point, then I think this pool will kind of be like at maturity, and you will see that you know, it might be a little bit less, like 7.5% if staking rewards are 8% or something like that. That's what it'll kind of like balance out. But another thing that people have been saying is that, like, this right now, you could use this pool to short the RPL price. So you could deposit your rETH, you could borrow RPL, like for example, you could borrow 10,000 RPL, you can take that to Uniswap and you can dump it on Uniswap all at once. And that's kind of like shorting the RPL price, you know, thinking it will go lower, then you buy it back. And then when you buy it back, then you need to spend less on the RPL in order to pay back your loan. Now, that is really risky. Like I said, because the liquidity is so low. However, I wouldn't be surprised if people were like attempting to do something like that, because they could cause a potential flash crash. Sentiment in the community is already so low, so people are worried, right, that this tool could be used for shorting RPL, and when liquidity is so low, that might be really damaging. But I think these market forces kind of balance out in one way or another. So if there is a flash crash, you might see a bunch of people like jumping in and trying to like buy up that crash. And shorting's a risky game. Like if you get left out of position, like you can lose all your collateral. So definitely understand that. Like you can lose everything you put in when you play these DeFi games.
Sure. Yeah, right now you can borrow at 1.52%, and the rewards I think is like 6.9% on RPL if you run the node.
8.1%.
Oh, 8.1. So there's that. You can borrow at 1.1.5%, and you're rewarded at 8%. That's a nice. You can kind of profit from the spread on the yield and the borrow rate. Okay, so well, it's good to see. Now, next up, we're going to touch on the some RPL tokenomics, and there's a lot here, Whack. And I mean, in the Discord under research, there's probably 1,000 pages of discussion, and for the most part, it's really high level and respectful discussion. It seems like there's like three. If it's consolidated into kind of three areas. One is do nothing, just leave the tokenomics as it is. The second is proposals by Nashua and Veldorf, and then you have maybe a third alternative developing from Wanderer and Ken. And this is still early in the discussion. I think this is going to take a while to flush out. What's the high level TLDR on this so far?
Yeah, so that is kind of Val's proposal, like at a very high level. I'm sorry if I made any mistakes in explaining that. It's the green line that you see on the screen at the moment. Now, other people have done rebuttals. One of them is Evan. One of them is Wanda has kind of like put forward a proposal as well. People have said that like they support this. People have said that they want to keep things as the way they are right now, and kind of like presented some cases and information for that. Now, one of the things that we have to remember is that this is the very early stages of discussion. There is nothing that has been decided here. Nothing has gone to a vote here. This is just the community kind of getting together and talking out ideas. That's the kind of spirit that this discussion should be in right now. And what I've been telling people like who watch the Rocket Fuel episodes that when I've been talking about it is that like please like bring your best ideas, please get involved in the discussion, please share your ideas and opinions, and be willing to listen to other people's perspectives, because we all should be willing to do what's best for Rocket Pool. Now that's kind of the position that I've taken and the position that I've been telling people, because there's a whole lot going on here, and I really don't want it to reach the point where we get to a vote in a few weeks, a few months time, potentially, like in a few months, and people like getting really passionate and really like the tensions running high in the community, which is what's happened in the past when we've had some votes, and I really don't want that to happen again. So I've been telling people like please get involved in the discussions, please get involved in talking to people in the in the thread on Discord, and bring your best ideas and be willing to like learn and listen. And everyone, right, like everyone be willing to learn and listen, and that I think will be the best course forward. I just really hope that can happen. At the moment, the tone of the conversation has mostly been good, and there've been some things that could be said better, and I really hope that can happen going forwards.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a good discussion so far, and it's pretty high level. It took me a while to try to wrap my hands around all the different aspects of the proposals. So that's going to evolve over time, and we'll cover it here on the weekly orbit. So we're going to end it here. We're having, apologize viewers and listeners for the quality of this episode. We're trying to put it together as best we can. Next week, we'll have a more sound episode. So Whack, enjoy the rest of your day. And to all our listeners, we'll see you next week for another edition of the Weekly Orbit. Okay. We'll see you later, Whack.